Welcome to SST8's series on evidence-based instructional strategies. This webinar is one in our series of webinars aimed at improving student performance. The intent of these webinars is for teacher-based teams, individual teachers, or building level teams to view and discuss the content and provide flexibility in meeting your professional development needs. For example, you may choose to chunk the content and break it up over multiple days, or you may wish to use it as part of a professional development day. This session is focused on Socratic Seminar, an evidence-based discussion strategy. To support your learning during this session, you may want to access our Evidence-Based Strategies Socratic Seminar resource document to use throughout the training. So, gather your team members and let's give it a go. Before we dive into the strategy, let's take a look at the role of discussion. Discussion is vital to comprehension and critical thinking, but the implementation is less than robust. Nystron's observations of middle and high school English classes found that the average length of whole class discussion varied from 14 to 52 seconds per period. Hardly enough for anyone to deepen his or her knowledge. This data reflects English language arts classes, not a study hall or a lab. What are your thoughts? If this is true for an English class, what about other content area classes? At this time, pause the webinar and discuss your reaction with your team. When you're ready, resume the webinar. So let's take a look at our learning intentions for this session on Socratic Seminar. For our content learning intention, we will learn about Socratic Seminar as a discussion strategy and how it can be used to deepen thinking about a text. For our language learning intention, we will reflect on, discuss, and share new thinking around the process of Socratic Seminar as a way for students to understand a deeper meaning of a text. And for our social learning intention, we will participate in conversations and collaborate with our team members to increase the impact on student learning using Socratic Seminar. Much of the information shared in this session comes from the visible learning research from John Hattie. When we discuss John Hattie's work, we talk specifically about effect sizes. In his research, John has found that the average effect size over all effects that he has studied is 0.4. Hattie considers the 0.4 effect size to be a marker that represented a year's growth per year of schooling for a student. Anything above 0.4 would have a greater positive effect on student learning. When we talk about learning, there are three types of learning: surface, deep, and transfer. According to Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry, surface learning refers to building foundational knowledge, such as concepts, skills, and strategies. Deep learning is consolidating foundational knowledge for students to be able to apply and extend their own learning to develop a deeper understanding. And transfer learning is the point where students take all of their knowledge and understanding and apply it in new and different contexts. Learning is the process of developing sufficient surface knowledge to then move to deeper understanding such that one can properly transfer this learning to new tasks and situations. This is exactly what happens in Socratic Seminar. Fisher, Fry, and Hattie have characterized numerous evidence-based strategies, and you can see where the strategies fall in regard to surface, deep, and transfer learning. As you can see from the chart, formal discussion is a transfer learning strategy and has an effect size of 0.82. Let's take a look at the research regarding the strategy. Socratic Seminar is an effective transfer strategy that can be used to help students understand a text deeply. It draws on many elements of discussion and thinking, including accountable talk, rules of discussion, and metacognitive thinking. Close reading of a text occurs in advance of a Socratic seminar. The evidence suggests that all students, but especially students that struggle to comprehend text, will benefit the most from this strategy, which has an effect size of 0.82. So let's do a quick reflection. Consider the following question. How often am I providing opportunities for my students to engage in structured discussion with the goal of deepening their learning and increasing comprehension? At this time, pause the webinar and discuss the question with your team members. Let's start with identifying what is Socratic Seminar. On your resource document, you may wish to capture some key phrases to help you remember the characteristics of this discussion strategy. Socratic Seminar, with an effect size of 0.82, is a formal discussion strategy based on a text in which the leader asks open-ended questions. Within the context of the discussion, students listen closely to the comments of others, think critically for themselves, and articulate their own thoughts and their responses to the thoughts of others. They learn to work cooperatively and to question intelligently and civilly. So what is the Socratic Method? The Socratic Method is based on Socrates' theory that it is more important for the students to think for themselves than to merely fill their head with the right answers. In a Socratic seminar, participants seek deeper understanding of complex ideas in the text through rigorously thoughtful dialogue. This process encourages divergent thinking rather than convergent. After reading the common text, several questions are posed, which are primarily open-ended: world connection, universal theme, and literary analysis questions. Such questions allow students to think critically, analyze multiple meanings in text, and a certain degree of emotional safety is felt by participants when they understand that this format is based on dialogue and not debate. So let's see what it looks like in action. At this time, you're going to watch a video example of Socratic Seminar. On your Socratic Seminar resource document, find the video link for Socratic Seminar. At this time, pause the webinar to watch the video link in your resource document. As you're watching, jot down your responses to the questions. What do you notice about the role of the students? And what do you notice about the role of the teacher? When you're finished viewing the video, please resume the webinar. Now that you know what Socratic Seminar looks like in the classroom, let's consider the planning, implementation, and reflection stages in Socratic Seminar. Before starting Socratic Seminar, during the planning stage, the role of the teacher is to read and identify the texts to be considered. Then choose a text or a passage for the class to read. Share the purpose of Socratic Seminar, and then generate a guiding question to be discussed, which will be shared with the students as soon as the text is assigned. And then review the norms for seminar prior to the discussion. So then what is the role of the student? The student will read the text prior to the discussion, respond to the guiding question from the teacher as soon as the text is assigned, and participate in the discussion. So what is the purpose of Socratic Seminar? Before beginning the seminar, it is important to remind students that the purpose of the seminar is not to debate or prove a point, but to more deeply understand what the author was trying to express in the text. If you've never done a Socratic Seminar activity with your students before, you might want to spend a few moments brainstorming the qualities that would make a great seminar. These qualities or criteria could be explained in a rubric and used to evaluate the seminar at the end of the class period. Criteria that you may want to consider for a Socratic seminar might be engagement, which is everyone listening and sharing. Respect, no interruptions or put downs. Meaning making, where students are understanding the text more deeply at the end of the seminar, and use of evidence, which would always be having the students refer back to the text. You may wish to remind students of the criteria prior to starting the webinar. What should you consider when choosing a text? Socratic seminars work best with authentic texts that invite inquiry, such as a short story, a pair of contrasting primary source documents in social studies, or an article on a controversial approach to an ongoing scientific problem. If you choose a simple text where the meaning is fairly straightforward, there won't be much for students to discuss. Also, the text should not be too long to read closely in the allotted amount of time. Often, teachers select a text ranging from one paragraph to one page. Your district may have resources that would lend themselves well to a Socratic seminar. But let's take a look at some additional Socratic seminar resources you may wish to explore. Where might you find texts to use with Socratic seminar? Some considerations include accessibility and the lexile levels of the selected texts. There are many options for resources. A few that you may wish to explore are listed on this slide and also on the resources section of your resource document. If you're working with elementary students, you may wish to explore Aesop's Fables, which can be a great choice when working with younger students. For all students, you may wish to check out Newsela. It offers text options in various areas: social studies, science, cross-content, English language arts, and social emotional learning, with articles ranging in various lexile levels available to meet the needs of your students. Another option is to take a look at the paired texts available through ReadWorks. This site allows you to filter by grade level, nonfiction text selections in social studies or science, by lexile level, and open-ended questions, which are perfect for student discussion. In addition to the ideas already mentioned, let's consider some additional resources for secondary students. NPR is another option for secondary students. You may wish to have students read the transcript to discuss the content from the selected topic. As you are exploring some of the resources, you'll find that there is often a read aloud option which may assist in supporting the needs of some of your students. Another incredible resource is Kelly Gallagher's site, Building Deeper Readers and Writers. He posts an article of the week and his archive is available over the past 7 years. Some of the current articles posted include How Pandemics Change Society, When Will Sports Come Back, The Race for a Coronavirus Vaccine, The Doctor Who Helped Defeat Smallpox Explains What's Coming, You Might Just Be Addicted, Smartphone Use Physically Affects Your Brain, study says. With the sheer volume of articles available on this site, you are sure to find a topic to pique your students' interest. At this time, pause the webinar to explore some of the Socratic seminar resources on the Evidence-Based Strategies resource document. With your team, each member should select one resource to explore. You'll have 5 minutes to look around and determine one item that you want to share with your teammates. After everyone shares the resource with the rest of the team, please resume the webinar. Now that you've selected the text, how will you prepare your students for Socratic seminar? It's imperative to prepare the students with the expectations for participation. While students should read carefully and prepare well for every class discussion, it is usually best to tell the students ahead of time that they will be expected to participate in Socratic seminar. Because seminars ask students to keep focusing back on the text, You may wish to distribute sticky notes for students to use to annotate the text as they read. Students will be using and referring to their own copy of the text throughout the discussion. To prepare for seminar, make sure to tell your students what to expect. This includes that they'll need to be able to read carefully. They should be ready to discuss the text. They'll need to provide evidence to support their answers. They may wish to use sticky notes to annotate their text, and they're going to focus on the text during discussion. And finally, they'll listen and respond to what their peers are saying. Before beginning a Socratic seminar, you may want to provide students with the norms for the discussion. By creating an anchor chart, you can keep the norms posted for students to see and refer to during the Socratic seminar. Many teachers choose to revisit the norms prior to starting each seminar. This serves as a reminder of expectations prior to starting the seminar. Clarifying expectations prior to starting the seminar will help to set your students up for success. If the norms on the previous slide weren't enough for you, here are a few additional norms that you may wish to consider when using with older students. Talk to each other. Refer to the evidence from the text to support your ideas. Ask questions if you don't understand what someone has said, or you can paraphrase what another student has said for clarification, like, I think you said this, is that right? You don't need to use your hand, you don't need to raise your hand to speak, but please pay attention to your air time, how much time you have spoken in relation to other students. And then wait for your peers to finish speaking before you start sharing your thoughts. At this point, you've selected the text, clarified the expectations for students, and shared the norms. Now it's time to generate questions for the discussion. As you prepare for the questions for seminar, remember to generate as many open-ended questions as possible, aiming for questions whose values lie in the exploration, not the correct answer. One recommendation is starting and ending the questions that relate more directly to students' lives, so the entire conversation is rooted in the context of their real experiences. You may wish to provide students with questions ahead of time. Some teachers ask the students to write their answers down prior to seminar to ensure that there is some deeper level of thinking going on prior to the discussion. For some students, having a written response to refer to during the discussion is helpful and reduces student anxiety. At this time, pause the webinar and explore some of the open-ended questions on your resource document. Identify specific questions that you might use with your students. Resume the webinar when your team is ready to move on. We've talked about the role of the teacher and the student during the planning stage of the Socratic seminar. Let's talk about the role of the teacher and the student during the implementing stage of Socratic seminar. What is the role of the teacher during the Socratic seminar? Well, the teacher will determine if the students need to conduct a second reading of the text prior to discussion. Provide open-ended questions for the group to discuss. The teacher will encourage the students to provide evidence from text to support their answers. The teacher will provide reminders, prompts, or sentence stems if the students get stuck. They'll encourage all the students to participate and redirect an off-track discussion if needed. Now let's talk about the role of the student during Socratic seminar. The student will bring their own individual text with annotations and or sticky notes to the discussion. They'll respond to the questions posed by the teacher. They'll listen to their peers' responses. They'll provide evidence from text to support their answers and add to or ask clarifying questions to their peers' responses to further understand the text. During the Socratic seminar, the teacher will start by asking an open-ended question. A typical opening prompt might be, what do you think this text means? Remember, silence is fine. it may take a few minutes for students to warm up. As students begin to respond to the first question, feel free to move on to the next open-ended question that you prepared. At least 15 minutes should be allotted to the first seminar, and many times they may last 30 minutes or longer. Know that as students become more familiar with the Socratic Seminar format, they will be able to discuss a text for longer periods of time without as much teacher direction. Here's what you need to know about your role as the teacher. Though you may assume leadership through determining which open-ended questions students will explore first, the teacher should not see him or herself as a significant participant in pursuit of those questions. You may find it useful to limit your intrusions to helpful reminders about procedures, such as, maybe this is a good time to turn our attention back to the text. Or, do we feel ready to explore a different aspect of the text? Resist the urge to correct or redirect, relying instead on other students to respectfully challenge their peers' interpretations or offer alternative views. So we've talked about the role of the teacher and the student before and during the seminar. Let's take a look at the role of the teacher and student after seminar, during the reflection stage. During this stage, the teacher will reflect upon the participation of the students in the seminar, reflect upon what went well and what needs to be considered for next time. The teacher is going to distribute self-reflection questions for the students to complete, and then gather information from the reflections and determine some common themes or next steps. And during this stage, the student is going to reflect upon the seminar and complete the self and group reflection, and perhaps set individual goals for the next seminar. After participating in Socratic Seminar, it's time for the students to do a self-reflection. This step encourages students to practice metacognition, evaluating their own performance during the seminar. At the end of each seminar, you may wish to allot 10 minutes or so for students to respond to the reflection questions. Here are some questions that you may wish to use as a reflection with your students. What did you find most interesting about today's seminar? What did you find most surprising? Did anything make you change your mind or think more deeply? What was it? How? And why or why not? What did you contribute to today's seminar? Be specific. And what might you do differently at our next seminar? Be specific. After completing the self-reflection, it's beneficial to provide students the opportunity to evaluate the process in general. Here are some questions you may wish to consider. At any point, did the seminar revert to something other than a dialogue? If so, how did the group handle this? What evidence did you see of people actively listening and building on others' ideas? How has your understanding of this text been affected by the ideas explored in this seminar? What parts of the discussion did you find most interesting? In what parts were you least engaged? What would you like to do differently as a participant the next time you are in seminar? During the reflection stage, you may wish to have students set a goal for the next seminar and revisit their goal prior to beginning the next seminar discussion. Let's return to the data from this slide, where the average length of whole class discussion varied from 14 to 52 seconds per period, which was hardly enough for anyone to deepen his or her knowledge. As you consider how Socratic Seminar allows students to drive the discussion and understand a text more deeply through dialogue, think about the potential impact on your students in your classroom. As we come to a close in the webinar, recall what you observed when viewing the Socratic Seminar video and think about how you might implement this strategy in your own classroom. As we wrap up this session, please reflect on the following questions, which you will also find on your resource document. One class where I could try Socratic Seminar. One topic that would lend itself well to Socratic Seminar. And one resource that I will use. At this time, complete the prompts listed on the resource document and then pause the webinar to discuss the responses with your team. When you're finished, please resume the webinar. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen. For additional information on instructional strategies, please visit our website at www.sst8.org/school-improvement or check out our School Improvement playlist on our State Support Team 8 YouTube channel.